This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised.
Half Past Podcast. This is episode 69, the movie review of Murder on the Orient Express. There's no trailer for this week, so I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot Ian Jones.
Oh, we're starting already, huh?
Yes.
We just spent like an hour talking, which is good.
Right?
Since we're best friends, and it's always good to catch up with my buddy. But you know, since there's no trailer, I think there was something that you wanted to mention, but I'm going to jump in first.
All right.
Because while what you have to say is important, I think this is maybe even more so, and that is all these scandals that are breaking. With sexual harassment in Hollywood, and it's only going to continue.
Well, yeah.
And it just seems like we're hearing a different name every other day, and it's like, oh no, you know, like say it's not so, and it's not really it's not really a laughing matter. However, I will say that, you know, last year we lost all these celebrities, you know.
Yes.
And the year ended with Carrie dying, and it was just like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You know, and now this year it's like, you know, oh crap. Why couldn't these guys have OD'd? I mean, it's just like, it's just the complete opposite. Oh,
that's terrible.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what's terrible is, you know, we said no trailers, and I asked you if you saw this one, but you know, the studio announced that you know, Ridley Scott's All the Money in the World, which is coming out in late December, right around Christmas.
Okay.
Which was going to have, the studio was going to push it to try to win Academy Awards, because that's what you do, by the way. When you have a drama, you release it towards the end of the year, and then you spend money to try to get it an Academy Award. That's how the system works.
Yes.
That's how you get Shakespeare in Love, and now I'm ranting about that awful movie winning when it didn't deserve anything whatsoever. So, so this movie, All the Money in the World, the trailer played, and Kevin Spacey is in it. And it was already announced that the studio wasn't going to push him for an Oscar, which they thought he was going to get for his role. And in fact, they're spending millions to reshoot his part, and the trailers are already out. So they already had to release the trailers, and they're replacing him with Christopher Plummer. It's going to cost the studio millions, but the thing is, if they didn't do it, the movie would have been dead on arrival, and it might still be. This could save it in terms of actually making a profit because of all the buzz.
They would have to, like, reshoot everything.
Yes, and they are.
Ugh.
I mean, it's the price tag is in the millions. It's 8 days of reshoots, and when you see the scenes that Kevin Spacey is in, you know, I mean, it's actually probably more than that with all the travel, because he's in the movie enough to where, I mean, this is a significant deal, and it's due out December 22nd. So they've already had to bring in Mark Wahlberg and Michelle Williams, who they had scheduled for reshoots anyway, just in case. But, you know, boy, is that cutting it close.
I cannot believe that at all. Are they still? They're still going to try to release it this year?
Yes, they thought about pushing it off, but the thing was,
when did they start reshooting?
The scandal just happened. So
that's what I'm saying. So did they start reshooting immediately?
No, I mean, that's going to be within this week or so.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, the amount of money involved in it is completely testing, you know, these studios, because they thought they had an award winner on their hands.
Yeah.
And now they're completely having to remove one of their stars. And I'll tell you, when Kevin Spacey's character came up on screen and they announced who it was, because it doesn't even really look like him. Yeah. everyone tensed around me in the theater. Like you could feel it, and people were already whispering. So I think that's probably the right call. I think it makes more sense to push it off till the next year, but they're trying to win awards with this one.
Yeah, that's just so weird why they wouldn't just push it off till next year anyway. I mean, it's going to cost you millions to reshoot everything anyway. Yeah.
And no one may give it another look. I mean, that was one of the parts that they thought was going to be up for an award.
I am shocked that you even saw the trailer. I'm shocked that they released the trailer.
That's part of the issue, because they already did. It was already attached to these other movies that Fox was doing.
Jeez.
So, they couldn't take that back. They couldn't undo the fact that the trailer had to be released for it.
Ugh. That is awful. I can't even imagine even being like the editor on that, who's like now under the gun,
Right, yeah. I mean, that's like the turnaround time on this is huge.
I mean, the amount of shots that you would have to get, and freaking cars, man, I swear.
You live by a raceway.
You'd think I'd live by a raceway, but it's like a normal neighborhood street. It's like it's not a main street, but it's the one right below that, but not a complete neighborhood street. So they're not zooming around in like a 25-mile-an-hour street. But, like, what the heck, man? It's just like that specific street. Everybody's just like, we're just going to open these cars up on the street. Cars up.
On that gentle curve there.
Yeah, right. Every time. I apologize about the cars.
It's all right.
But I feel like... I just feel like even just being, like, just all the staff, I can't imagine doing the reshoots also under the gun. It's like, jeez, man, that is absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe... I mean, you're essentially starting from scratch. Well, if he's one of the main actors.
Well, and I think he's a supporting role. I mean, it's about the billionaire back in the 60s or whenever it was who had his grandson kidnapped.
Oh, okay.
But it shows him in different scenes, like he's in Egypt and he's in all these different locations, and I mean the guy's a total shark. But when you see the scenes where he shows up, like where he's talking to the press and everything, those are on location, and
I wonder if they're going to be on location anymore. Because we know that in order to cheapen out on reshoots, they'll do that. They'll put them in a soundstage because it's significantly cheaper than going on location.
Because 8 days doesn't sound like traveling to all these different places.
No, I feel like they have to do everything on like a soundstage in the turnaround time, and hopefully they can just put it in post and just like throw in some backgrounds and everything, That's crazy.
It's just amazing to me that there is a version of this movie that has him in it that they thought was an Academy Award-winning performance, and it's now gone forever. And rightfully so. But when you put it in the context, that shows you, I think, how quickly this escalated.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's pretty crazy to think about.
That is crazy to think about. Jeez, man. Usually we don't start talking about stuff like news-oriented stuff on this podcast, but this is something that's been, like, just stuff is just coming out of nowhere. There's just so much stuff coming out, and it's definitely affecting the industry for sure. That's crazy, man. Alright, do you want to get on to Murder on the Orient Express here?
Well, just real quick, let's give a shout-out.
Oh, you want to do the shout-out now?
Yes.
All right. There's a shout-out that I would like to thank. I'm sure both of us would love to thank a user on iTunes, Pandora Rocks, that gave us such a good review and 5 stars on there. And it was so so nice, and that kind of stuff like really keeps us wanting to keep recording, which is, to be honest, is another reason why I wanted to get this bonus episode out between the last one and not Jurassic, but Justice League. And so I just felt Jurassic League would be a very interesting movie. Anyway,
mashup.
I just feel like I just wanted to say thanks, and that really keeps us going, and that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. It was very nice.
Yep. All right, so let's take a break.
Enough
and
mushy
then we'll...
crap. Quick break. Play some music.
All right, let's take a break. Train ride unfolds into a stylish and suspenseful mystery. Based off the novel, this story tells of 13 stranded strivers in one man's race to solve the puzzle before the murderer strikes again. This movie is directed and starring Kenneth Branagh, I believe is how you say that guy's name?
Branagh.
Yeah. Branagh? Or is it Branagh?
Branagh, I think.
Branagh?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with Branagh. We'll just quote Ian on that one.
Starring his mustache.
And he directed this movie, but he also was the main character, and he's really well known for directing and starring in Shakespearean things. And there's a lot of these guys in here, in this movie. Like, he hired a bunch of, like, stage actors in this movie. So you have Henry V, and you have Much Ado About Nothing and Hamlet. He did all those movies also. Tom Bateman as I had such a hard time in this movie understanding his accent through a huge portion of the time, like Hercules. And it was Tom Bateman as Boke. Is it Boke?
I don't have this on my list here.
Okay, well, either way, he was the one that was like the conductor guy, or not the conductor, but the guy who
owned the train?
Who owned the train. He was the owner of the train. And he's known for Jekyll and Hyde for the British TV series. Penelope Cruz is Pilar Servatos. She was in Vanilla Sky, Blow, and Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Willem Dafoe is Gerhard, or Cyrus Hardman. He's been known for Platoon, Mississippi Burning, and of course the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire.
He's also in a Netflix movie called What Happened on Monday, which I really enjoyed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to watch that.
Check that out.
Is he still creepy? Everything he's in, he's creepy.
I mean, he wasn't really that creepy in this one or in that one. So, I mean, he's maybe with age.
Maybe with age, he's somehow looking less creepy.
But then he's in Death Note, and he's just himself.
Nice.
And creepy as all get out. So
nice. Judi Dench as Princess Dragomirov, and she was also she's done a lot of Shakespeare, so she's pretty much done Shakespeare and James Bond is what I know her for. She played M through like a lot of James Bond movies. Johnny Depp as Samuel Ratchet or John Cassetti. He was in Edward Scissorhands, Sleepy Hollow, and of course all the Pirates movies. Josh Gad as Hector McQueen, and it's well known amongst this podcast that we are not a fan of Josh Gad, but he was in Frozen, Pixels, and Beauty and the Beast. Derek Jacobi as Edward Henry Masterman. He was in The Secret of the Nim as Nicodemus. He was in Gladiator, and he's done he's a stage actor, so I believe he's done more stage stuff than anything else. Leslie Odom Jr. as Dr. Arbuthnot, or whatever. The accent, man, I didn't hear anything that proper with Kenneth Branagh's accent.
Okay.
He was in Red Tails, but he's probably most known for his playing Aaron Burr in the Hamilton musical. Michelle Pfeiffer as Carolyn Hubbard. She was Linda Arden. She was in Scarface. She was in Batman Returns and Dangerous Liaisons. last but not least here is Daisy Ridley as Mary Depp.
Daisy.
She is best known for Star Wars, of course.
Yeah,
she's
that's
Rey.
it. Those are her 2 movies.
Yes. All right, so let's take a quick break here, and then we'll get into like the quirks and likes of this little whodunit. All right, Jones, we're back here with our quirks and likes section, so let's go ahead and get started. So, first of all, this movie is the first thing I have to say that was pretty rough for me, and it took a while for me to get used to it, but I never fully got used to it, and that was his accent through the whole movie.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of time periods where I just did not know what he was saying.
I mean, I felt like, especially in the beginning sequence, it was just over the top. However,
it was.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that was filmed first, and then he kind of got calmer throughout, right?
Well, and maybe that was the case, because there were some times, as the mystery is trying to unravel itself, there were times really close in where I felt like it wasn't as bad.
Right? I felt the same way.
In that opening scene, I mean, there's one point where there's subtitles on the screen, and I almost felt like there should have been subtitles, like, for most of the movie with him. Certainly in that opening scene, I thought it got a little bit better as it went on.
I thought so too.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it was tough. So I had a lot of problems because since he's like a larger than life character, he has so much influence in this movie. He's the main character, and it's like hard. It's really hard to watch a movie where the main character is hard to understand. So
right.
It's kind of a big problem in this movie, and I honestly feel like the first scene was shot first, which doesn't always happen at all in movies when it comes to things like that. But it definitely gets toned down throughout the movie. So, like, definitely by the time he's on the train, all those shots where he's with the other actors is a lot less. It's a lot less heavy accent, which I think works better because you just need the hint of the French accent.
Right. Well, he's also difficult. Not running around and yelling for a big angry mob too. Yes.
Yep. And I think that helps it out a lot. The other major problem I have with this movie is, even though I really liked Hercule Poirot in this movie, but the problem is that when you first get introduced to him, he's really quirky, and he has this problem with imbalance. And you get a lot of that in the first scene. So, like, first of all, he just outright says it, but then also there's that scene where he steps in some just crap on the ground, right? So he steps in it, and he's just like, well, it's not that. It's the imbalance. And so he steps in it with his other foot and then continues on. And so he's got this really quirky aspect to him. And he's like always telling, like he told that first guy to straighten his tie because it was bothering him. And you don't get any of that on the train at all. Like it doesn't happen throughout the movie at all, which really upsets me because you get it at the beginning and then you get it at the end where he asks the guy to straighten his tie again, but you don't get the quirkiness throughout this train sequence, which, in my opinion, he should be, like, really annoyed. Like, there should be a lot of scenes where he's just like, something's out of place, and he's just kind of like, and then you only get a little bit of the, like, you get the eggs again, like, it calls back to the eggs, and it calls back to the tie, but the amount of stuff that's unbalanced on that train, he doesn't really show that it bothers him through the rest of the movie. And that kind of annoyed me, because I thought it was a really interesting way to have this character that way. And you don't really get it throughout. The other problem I have with this movie is there's several scenes in this movie where he talks about his Catherine, or Catherine, or whatever he says it. there's a lot of sequences with that, and you don't really know what happens to her. You know she's gone.
Yeah, well...
But you don't know, like, how she's gone. So, to me, I feel like if you're trying to add this backstory to this character, I would like to know more about this, because I think it would explain a little more of how he is if she was, like, murdered, you know? Like, then it would explain more why he's this, he's really pursuing being a detective all the time, even though all he wants is a break. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and his break would be spent alone anyway. You know, yes. I mean, the thing is, that's, you know, the introduction of her into this movie is one of those things that, you know, the director took upon himself to add. It isn't a part of Agatha Christie's novel.
Okay.
And so I'm just not sure the payoff is there, especially if you can't tie it into the end of the movie, where you have, you know, where you have an actress and a grieving mother who can never love again. I mean, it's weird. It's almost like there are two parallels staring at each other at the end of the movie, but that dot isn't connected.
It is not. And so, like you're saying, there's just not much of a payoff there. And that really annoyed me, because it's like, it's one of those things where the movie doesn't change if you just take those scenes out. So why have them in there?
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So, to me, I think it's really important if you're going to add this character. I don't, you know, it's a novel. I'm not a reader. I don't do a bunch of like novel stuff, and I know how people like things to be pure. But when movies are made, they change them and they add things and they take away things, because that's just how it is. And I don't mind them adding this in there, but give me a reason why to add it in there. There's no point to it at all. So, and that just bothered the heck out of me. The last thing I want to say, and this is just like a quirk of mine, and that's that the Count guy, like the one that had what was Armstrong's husband or whatever, the one that was with the barbiturates.
Yes. Yeah.
That guy, I think he had one or two lines, and everything else was him being violent and beating someone up. That was the only sequences they had. When he's first introduced, somebody takes a picture of him, and then he just immediately beats everybody up.
Right. There's no context.
There's no context at all to why he's the way he is. And the thing that I don't understand is you don't get any context throughout the movie at all. So you're just like, so it's just some angry guy that's clearly violent. And then you have his wife who's basically drugged up all the time. I feel like that's something that needs to be investigated more than this murder of Johnny Depp.
You know, so that's, I think you're touching on a big problem with this movie that I think a lot of people would have if they read the book. And in fact, if you don't know how the story ends, this is kind of rolling two things in there. You know, the story that Agatha Christie wrote, what's so great about it is that it's how the murder mystery gets solved. And how all these different characters are pieced together, and quite simply, a lot of them are not done justice. You know, it isn't as intricate, and it isn't as thoughtfully done as she does in the novel. And so some characters get completely glossed over, and in fact, and this is the big problem I have with this movie, is you don't see, you know, the thought process of the detective. He simply brings everyone together in a scene that looks like it's carved out of the Last Supper. And he just connects these dots. But I mean, the actual, you know, the brilliance of it as it's presented in the novel is missing. There's an entire step missing from this movie. And
it feels that way.
And so, I mean, I think that's apparent when you say, you know, well, I don't really understand what this character's problem is.
Yes.
Well, that's that's because we spend the entire time with, Hercule Poirot, and he's just an egomaniac.
Yeah.
All the shots of Kenneth are just it's mustache right in your face, and it's overdone. His close-ups are just they don't tell us. It's almost like the old Thin Man movies where he kind of pieces it together, but there isn't really much thought, and I hate saying this, but like the original Sherlock Holmes novels, the mini stories would fall apart if you actually shined a magnifying glass on it. If you blew on them, they would horribly fall apart because everyone just starts confessing at the very end. And so, these are a couple of quirks rolled into one. I think the bigger issue is that, the movie becomes more about his ego than anything else.
Yeah, it feels that way.
And at the very end, he has this change of heart. Whereas if it was told like it was in the book, and again, this is a movie, so, things are going to get changed.
Yeah.
But he would have started to have that change of heart. He would have started thinking about what is right and wrong here throughout the case.
Yes.
And it wouldn't have been what was actually kind of an exciting scene right at the end, but it was like a rush to put a bow on it.
Yes, I feel like the problem with this movie is this is another one of those movies where I wouldn't be surprised that it was cut for time. And the only reason I say that is because one of the things I noticed about this movie when I watched it, it's a whodunit, so it's rough anyway to watch for an extended period of time. But when I watched it, it didn't feel like it was as long as it was. And so that was a good thing, but I feel like some things were just really cut that should have been there. And for me, when I was watching, I haven't read the novel, but for me, when I'm watching how Hercule does this case, if you're going to add this character in with his wife, I feel like that's even more of him, like you're saying, he's trying to figure out what's right and wrong. And to have his wife add in, if she was murdered and he had never figured out what happened to her, it would really explain his drive to really solve this case on his vacation time. And then after that said, it would be even harder for him to make that change from right and wrong. Do you know what I'm saying when I say that? Do you get what I'm saying? Am I explaining this properly?
I do, but I'm sorry, you were cutting out a little bit, but I see what you're saying, but the problem is the connection isn't there for him.
No.
To add these extra things with the detective when there already is too much of him, and he completely takes over the story, and you can see that, you can see why it's so challenging, because everyone has a motive.
Yes.
But the thing about the story is his final solution, that they all were involved, which is pretty outlandish, and I think there's even a line in the novel where someone accuses him of, look, this is crazy, even though that was the case, that's exactly what happened. Someone actually accuses him of that just being way over the top. It couldn't possibly have been them all. But I mean, you're missing, the part where he actually solves it.
It's like you said at the end where they're all sitting at the table. There's even stuff that isn't involved throughout the movie before, that he immediately tells you exactly why this person is involved. He just tells it to you and it's not shown. He just did it and tells you. So that's the other problem that you're saying, that he doesn't actually, you don't see him really see his thought process on how he's done it. He just tells you at the end of the movie. Because there's like 3 or 4 characters where he's just like, well, this person's involved because of this reason, and they do these flashbacks, and that's it. And that's all you get out of it, rather than it showing how he figured all this stuff out. So I thoroughly believe that they were trying to cut this movie down, and I don't know if those shots exist, but maybe because there's so many characters and you're trying to get this movie down to a reasonable amount of time, that they had to like put some of these characters by the wayside, which I think hurts the movie. I feel like the movie would have been better if there was another 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, but you just never know. I mean, what 15 minutes are those going to be? Is that him and his mustache? Which, I mean, it was the very first thing I wrote on my list of quotes.
We obviously don't need any more Hercule in the movie.
Okay, well, that's the thing. That's the thing, though. Someone might disagree with you. Not me. Nice. I don't. But I mean, like, you know, and you mentioned it, you know, the Count and his girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, who's on that barbital stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so that's how he's drugged, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
Drugs are there. But I mean, you know, really, she has a few lines with him and, you know, happens to mention something about having a governess.
Yes.
And we know there's a governess on board.
Yes.
So it's just, you know, like, that's not enough for me.
Yeah. It also makes it a lot, like, it makes it easier to figure out that everybody's involved, because it seems like just as this is going on, you're just like, everybody clearly has a motive here. Like, you're just like it just adds all together just for you. Like, it's not even that difficult to piece together, which I think makes Hercule less awesome. You know what I mean? Like, it lets the character less of a detective for me.
You know, the other thing I thought, which was wildly inconsistent, and then I'm ready to move into likes, is that there's some really clever camera work, and it's almost too clever. It's almost I don't like something out of a 3D movie like Polar Express. But I mean, it doesn't really stay consistent throughout the movie. I mean, like, there's a weird overhead shot, which I was like, that's an interesting choice to do this. But it's almost too long of a shot.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because this is one of my likes about the movie, is that some of the camera work was really cool.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's just kind of like, there's a lot of clever little camera work here, and I'm like, and you're right, it is inconsistent. It's just like certain shots have these angles where it's just really creative. And that straight down shot from above, I really thought was good in certain sequences, and there are some that are longer than it should be. But I really thought that because it's a perfect shot straight down, to me it was a shot with Hercule, and it made it his whole balance, having a problem with balance, having this like perfectly straight down shot, I thought was really appropriate for that character, because everything was like perfect and in line, and there's a lot of in line shots like that throughout the movie. It's just inconsistent. But I have enjoyed the shot when they were panning across everybody in the train car, and it kept going through the lines, and it was like doubling of the character through the glass. Right, like, that was just like a cool, like, there's shots like that are just awesome. But then there's just, it's like you said, it is really inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally showing that everyone has two faces.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, should there be less of that or more? I mean, especially when people are talking.
Yeah.
You know, however, when you spend the money on the set that they did, and they did a wonderful job with the set in order to achieve those camera angles.
Yeah, they did.
I just feel like, you either need a little bit more, or maybe you got to pull back some.
That makes sense.
All right, that's it for me as far as quirks, buddy.
All right, so let's get into our likes. We merged all our quirks together, so let's get into the likes. I already mentioned how much I enjoyed some of the camera angles, so we already got involved in all of that. So I thought that was really cool. And even though we didn't really get to know a lot of the characters I enjoyed. So Hercule as a character, I enjoyed. His little quirkiness that he had about him was nice, and it was definitely an interesting thing to have this detective trying to solve all these, put all these pieces together to solve this puzzle. I just thought that they didn't have enough of his character, his actual quirkiness of the character in the movie, even though he's in it a lot. Like, he's like most of the movie. Like, all the shots are him, which is even more impressive because he's the director at the same time. So it's just like, there's just a lot of things going on with that. Other than that, I don't really have anything else that I thoroughly enjoyed about the movie. I just thought I really enjoyed some of the shots, and I thought the characters were interesting, and I definitely wanted to know more about the characters. And so it would have been nice to just get more info on them and try to get more involved. But like we said earlier, that's one of the problems with this movie, is that you don't get as much detail as you want. You spend too much time with Hercule. But, alright.
Well, I'll tell you, I think I'll just go to movies and watch Daisy Ridley. And although there couldn't have been more of her in it, I think without there seriously being an investigation, it's like Cowbell. I gotta have more of it. You know, I liked how they portrayed her relationship with the doctor and everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked about the camera work. I thought the scenery and even some of the things that really weren't in the book, for example, the introduction of the gun, I thought was pretty... you know, I felt like they probably needed it. I'm not sure there's an adaptation of this that's going to work for modern day audiences. I think this is probably the closest I've seen. You know, like I mean, it's like it's such a particular thing that I just don't like. I just don't think younger audiences would like any other version of this movie. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, but the other problem for me is like a whodunit style movie is just hard anyway, because you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out, like, watching a guy try to solve a crime. And so even though there's like numerous TV shows like that, they're only like an hour long, and there's usually so much ridiculous stuff going on that doesn't normally happen that it keeps you entertained for an extended for that hour. But this is like more than 2 hours, and it's one crime, and it's a detective doing legitimate detective work. So it's a lot of asking around and trying to figure it out. And so it's really difficult to make that incredibly interesting. And so I personally can't think of a whodunit that I've seen where I thought was exceptionally well done. So to me, I think it's just difficult anyway to get an audience like that to do it, unless it's the older style of movie. So I don't know. So I get your point. Do you got any other likes?
No, I don't.
All right. You had camera work and Daisy Ridley. Okay.
Well, I mean, you covered some of them. I actually liked the performance from the detective. I really didn't think we got enough from the other characters.
I didn't think so either.
You know, and in particular, where it really fell short for me was that you've got Johnny Depp, and he's really good at being an ass. but that scene doesn't quite hit home. And certainly just giving him a gun doesn't do it. like didn't help any. I mean, he's got the scars on his face. He's everything's in place there. But there's just not enough threatening going on between him and
How many more scenes did you need?
Well, just the one scene, where he's clearly a snake. But I mean, he's not even. I mean, he's sort of talking, and it's clear that he's an asshole.
Yeah.
In one scene where he's walking through the train. But I mean, It just seems like there's something missing with the villain here. And he spends more time dead with people talking about what he did or might have done, as opposed to doing something that's really like, you know what? I want to see this guy die. And then he does die.
You get a little more of a payoff is what you're expecting.
Yes. And yet you still have to solve his murder anyway.
Yep. Which would also help with the whole right or wrong thing that we wanted Hercule to deal with. So that's just how it is. Alright, so let's go ahead and rate this thing.
Rate this sucker.
I think this movie, for a whodunit, isn't that bad. It's just missing a lot of little things, and I feel like if you added 15 minutes of more of the other characters and less of Hercule, it probably would have been a better movie. It would have improved itself had it done stuff like that. But I'm going to have to say it's definitely a rent it. I'll say rent it.
Yeah, I think it's a solid rental.
I think so too. Redbox.
Yeah, it's not worth the $6 small soda. Hey, I spent $4.03 on the movie ticket.
Oh, well, that's super cheap.
Something on the small soda.
Nice.
Yeah.
A $10 trip to the movie is not bad.
I know. Yeah. No, you know what? That's fine. Stayed on my diet, didn't get any popcorn.
Nice. So I guess we're just saying it with Reddit. I just think it's really difficult for whodunits. I think it's hard to do to watch somebody try to solve a crime for an extended period of time. And I'm hoping that, because apparently we're going to get something similar to that. It's going to be a detective story with that new Batman movie that's coming out. So hopefully maybe they can pull it off. Maybe adding Batman punching some people in the face will make it a little more...
A guy in a costume running around fighting bad guys.
Fighting bad guys. If they add that into the aspect of his detective work, maybe it'll be a better whodunit. But I firmly believe that whodunits are tough in this generation anyway. It would have worked, years ago, but not so much now. So I guess we're going to go ahead and sign out. You can always contact us on our home on the web at halfpastpodcast.com.
Can like us on Facebook.
Rate us on iTunes and Google Play, just like Pandora Rocks did.
Ooh, yes. We're on Stitcher and Libsyn.
Email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
All right, tweet us at halfpastpodcast. Come find us on Twitter.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support, especially for Pandora Rocks. I'm going to keep saying that because it was such a nice thing.
Next week is Justice League.
Yep, we had this bonus one just because we wanted to get something in there before Justice League. So next week we have Justice League, so we'll see how that one's going to go. I think everybody's aware that I am not crazy excited about that movie.
I'm going to punch you in the face, Justice League style.
A running
punch like the Flash. I don't run that fast, so.
I think it depends on how much Joss Whedon is in this movie. I feel like if there's more Joss Whedon, it's a better movie.
And
but we'll have to see. And more Wonder Woman. So more Joss Whedon in Wonder Woman means that this movie will be better. But I I feel like there's gonna be some like storytelling issues.
I just don't want to see Cyborg. God, he seems so bland.
Yeah, well,
I know
Cyborg
that's where
is.
they spent a good deal of their reshoots.
Oh yeah. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Maybe he gets a lot better. We'll have to see.
Marginally. I think the word is marginally, not a space lot.
This is the Half-Fast Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.